Welcome to David and David on Real Estate. Join us as we explore the ins and outs of the real estate market.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Andrew, we are so proud to have you on board. You're quite the person in marketing and real estate marketing, to be specific. You started off as a realtor at one point. I think construction before that. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was in concrete forming. So I did a history degree, which went to concrete forming, as one naturally does. And then I ended up buying a house and decided I wanted to become an agent. That was that one that everyone dreads, of like calling up the agent and be like, what would a career in real estate be like?
Yeah, and then you swiftly went into marketing, because I think you were providing some marketing for your and lead generation for the brokerage as well, correct?
Not directly. So I built my stuff online as an agent, and then my brokerage, we got bought out by a larger brokerage within the same brand, and then so we started, like, they started having more training sessions and asked me to do a couple, because I was one of the few like doing stuff consistently online. And this was back right before like going paperless was legal, like e-signature, so like when you couldn't do that yet, and I was starting to go paperless already. So but we knew that like it was coming, the digital signing stuff. So like I did half like social media training, half going paperless training for my office. And then the head office of the brand recruited me to train agents across North America how to do that. So I ended up traveling mostly like Ontario, but a little bit into the US and a little bit Eastern Canada type of thing. We ended up training agents, but every time I trained agents on how to grow their business and go paperless, the same thing happened. They just say, can I just hire you to do this for me? Eventually I realized there's a pretty good business there. So that's when we started Just Sell Homes.
It's so amazing, huh? David, I think you guys came on board a little bit later as law firms to this paperless signing, but I can't even imagine, like, we get so used to all this technology and the ways of doing things that I can't even remember what we used to do prior to. You know,
print out 6 copies plus a clean one for the lawyer.
I know. The other day, one of my realtors, he's been with the brokerage for a long time. When we merged Sutton Signature with Sutton Summit about 5.5, 6 years ago, he was part of Sutton Signature, where we are located right now in Streetsville, and he called me up, and he was driving towards the office, and he was quite distraught. He said, I called up the front desk. It was Sunday morning, and the girls turned around and said they don't have the packages anymore. So I was like, what packages are you asking about? He goes, the listing packages. I said, well, they're quite redundant anymore. They don't even have them, and they don't even print them and send them anymore. Or because there's so many changes. And it's so amazing, because any changes that happen, we had Tim Hudak on last week, David and myself, and that's what we were talking about, ORIA forms and all of that, and they're so quickly change, and and it's all done online. I don't even have to change my templates that I've created on web form for the brokerages, because it automatically just uploads everything that's new.
Yeah, I did an offer recently on a place, and we used an ORIA form for it, and it'd been so long since I had done that, I like didn't recognize half the form to take a minute to sit and go through it again.
So Andrew, just take us back maybe in the time frame, like how many years ago was this when you were like, how many years ago was it when you started as a realtor and then you sort of transitioned into this tech expert?
Just over 10 years ago that I got licensed. And then I sold for 2 years. And then I was only in the training role for about 14 months. And then Just Sell Homes, we've now been doing just the marketing agency for about 7.5 years, roughly.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting how, time goes by. I think we all lose track of some of the time because of what's gone on for the last couple of years. We sort of skipped a couple of years. It was all 1 year, but it was 3 years.
Yeah, we just finished March 2020, like 2 months ago.
Yeah. But yeah, we were determined in our office to try and get to a paperless point. Probably 10 years ago we started the process, but some of the technology just didn't exist to do it well, and certainly not to get signings done. Yeah. So we started the process just to get rid of paper in our files and do everything we could in our files as much as digitally, but we weren't allowed to sign up clients that way really until we got into COVID. because part of the documents in every transaction that we do are sworn documents, and that's where we ran into a roadblock. Everything that wasn't a sworn document, there was a way to do it. Anything sworn, the law at the time was it had to be in person. And then COVID hit, and the government said, hey, no transactions are going to close unless we allow them to do these Zoom calls, et cetera, and take someone's oath virtually. And that really changed. And now we've got a fabulous system. So even though we can meet in person, we're not, because because every meeting gets recorded, every meeting gets digital signatures. It's a better way, more secure way of doing it. So the genie's out of the bottle. We're not going back.
Yeah, I remember when it first happened in real estate, you could sign everything but the offer electronically. So like you do like the BRA, the work with the realtor. And then I remember there was a big debate in my office about, could you do the entire offer except for the confirmation of acceptance? And it was like, or could you not? You had to do the whole offer like it physically, and it just became a huge debate of which one was actually following the law.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about doing everything virtually and everything being recorded, David. That's how I feel at the brokerage, Andrew. It's become so much easier to actually train people, and I just make little videos and I record everything and I just put it, and it's so easy to be reused, and for realtors to just put it in stock and take it out whenever they're actually faced with it, because you know how many nuances in this business is. You're dealing with an assignment, and you don't do an assignment for another 5 years, and you become rusty. And I mean, regulations change too, but even in a shorter period of time, people forget how to do certain things. I'm quite excited about your marketing company, Andrew. I have a marketing degree actually, and used to work for Y&R, so Young and Rubicam for a long time. So I always love the existence of marketing and properly thought out marketing in realtors' lives, which is not always there. Not it's quite ad hoc, and and there's no really marketing budgets people put aside, and it is so important to treat a realtor's business just as any other business. I keep telling people there's no difference than opening a baking shop or selling any sort of commodity. You become the service, and if you brand yourself properly, rather than just thinking that, okay, I'm going to sell houses, then you become one of the I was listening to the TREB advertisement on radio the other day. What is it? 76,000 realtors just in TREB.
Yeah, no, what I wish they would tell us though is how many are actively trying to sell real estate. Like when I got my license, half the class had no intention of ever selling.
That's true.
Yeah, part-timers that just want to, if they do their own transaction or a couple for relatives or friends, they want to have a license.
Appraisers always get it. There's a lot of flippers who are getting it so they could do it that way.
Right.
And like licensed assistants. There's so many. And then like, I always enjoy the stat where it's like kind of misleading of like how many people do nothing, because all the team lead deals go, or like all the team deals go through the team lead. So it looks like everyone does zero.
Right.
That's why I was like, there's no good data source on like what actual group of that actually performs.
Yeah, this is something like 5% does 95% of the business.
Yeah.
But this is just
like if you
members.
downloaded that off a team leader and spread it out onto their team of who actually did it, how much would that change too?
Oh, of course. Yeah, absolutely. You're right. Yeah.
So you're still actively doing some real estate transactions yourself?
Not as a realtor. So I let my license go a year and a half ago. I hadn't actively sold, but yeah, my brother and I are doing, we bought a property, we're turning into some townhomes. So that's like just a side. We used a realtor to help us buy it. Yeah, so slightly different.
So Andrew, what exactly is your the advertising marketing company providing for realtors?
So we have kind of three main services. I mean, we kind of grew up on Facebook ads. Like that was our office, has always been our bread and butter and what I became known for. But I'm like, you work with a lot of realtors, you'll know, you start sending them leads. If they don't have systems in place to convert them, they're not doing anything with them. And that's what we noticed over time. So we started bringing in like email marketing that will help them convert it. So like emails and like a weekly newsletter for agents became kind of a fast growing part of our business. And that actually just organically led to a strategy build that basically now like our core offer is an 8-week program where we actually build out and then get it up and running an agent's marketing program for them. So it helps them have all those systems in place to, like, for some of them, it's generating leads and converting. Others, it's to work on their repeat and referral stuff online. But basically, it's like an 8-week program to help them build out their marketing strategy. Our intention of doing that is have clients that stay with us longer because they have a proper system in place. So when we're doing Facebook ads and newsletters, it's part of a bigger ecosystem instead of us just throwing money at Facebook ads for them.
Right.
So that's kind of like the core business for us. There's a few like little things outside of that we'll do, but typically that's our main focus.
Yeah, I mean, CRMs are so important, right? Like we've all
Yeah.
gone through schools and colleges and workplaces, and if we kept all our contacts, like networking is everything, and if it's flowing into some proper system. Andrew, I wanted to touch on this. So, what do you feel for, because mostly our viewers are realtors, you know, and listeners are realtors. What is your advice for realtors in terms of advertising, keeping themselves organized? Because what happens is I feel like we get into the rat race. You know, we have a deal ahead of us and we just forget about everything else, just kind of deal with that deal. And then once it's done, we're like, now where's the next one going to come from? Right.
Well, that's the tough thing with marketing is, especially with real estate, because transaction times are so long. Like the average lead's 12 to 18 months away, statistically speaking. And well, this is something I learned really early in my career because I had a couple of really great mentors of like, if you stop prospecting today, you won't notice it. You notice it 6 months from now. It's like that 6 months from now pipeline is a little dry up and it takes you 6 months to refill it. So you're really shooting yourself in the foot if you don't keep it going. So like that's actually one of the reasons with the strategy stuff we did. We actually created like a framework to help people kind of put everything in there to understand how all the pieces fit. Because at the end of the day, like whether you're a repeat and referral, a cold caller, a door knocker, there's still similarities in how you're marketing yourself. It's just they're like for example, the top first thing you always have to figure out is how can people who don't know that you exist discover that you exist. For a big team, if you like, you know, we work with a couple of teams that do 200-300 deals a year. Their listings alone will get people to discover that they exist. They don't need a lot else beside that. But if you're a brand new agent, you need to rely on something that has nothing to do with listings because you won't have any yet. So it's like for that initial person, like what is the way that you can get discovered by people? Then we look at how will they start talking to you. So like the second phase for us is called conversation. So like what gets people to start talking to you once they figure out that you exist? Then how do you get them to join your mailing list? Then how do you convert people from your mailing list into a client? Then how do you earn their trust? And then their long-term loyalty. So those 6 kind of components is what we look at as like, you know, these are the things that every agent needs at least 1 to 3 options under. And then once you have those out, you can kind of consistently work. So like when you're doing, especially when you get really busy, you can kind of come back to that and be like, all right, what do I have to definitely do? And what I like about having some type of framework like that too, is it helps you evaluate all like the shiny objects that come your way. Because if someone's like, hey, check out this tool, check out this, try this thing, you can like, okay, does it fit into what I have here? Right. And if it doesn't fit, you don't have to waste a lot of your time chasing the latest shiny object. You can evaluate it pretty quickly and be like, okay, does it make anything here better? Yes or no? Done. You've made a decision and moved on. But it's like finding those 6 things for each person, what those would be in their business.
What do you think should be a budget for a realtor in terms of marketing?
I mean, it depends on where you are in your business. I mean, most of the time,
percentage wise,
yeah, but even that can change a little bit. Like when you're brand new, percentage can vary. Like you're more spending your time than your money. Like how you market as a brand new agent versus an experienced one. Like typically when we're looking at people who have established, starting to have that consistent revenue, we're looking like 10 to 15% towards marketing. Some will go a little bit higher than that. I mean, some go way higher than that, of course, but typically that like 10 to 15, 10 to 20% range. I think I would look at like teams that do a lot of business. It kind of usually caps around that 17, 18% of their overall budget income towards marketing. But like if I was a brand new agent again, and I didn't have a huge budget, I mean, I would essentially trade that for my time and put that, like basically allocate that amount of my time towards it, and go that route instead of the cash output.
Right.
So you transition from realtor to tech expert, guru, trainer, marketing advisor. And so how does Real Estate Magazine come into play? What's the history of Real Estate Magazine? When did that start? And maybe take us through the history of that a little bit.
Yeah. So it's actually started in 1989. I was 2 years old. So I don't obviously know it from back then. But yeah, so it was in 1989, and it started actually as real estate marketing. That's where the REM came from. And then like they envisioned it more as like a place, an outlet for agents to market their listings in different places. Because obviously 89, you weren't really looking at the internet as another way. So they were looking for more places to put it out there. And then over time, it kind of shifted models more towards being the trade publication that, typically it was always print. So, if you were pre-COVID licensed, you've probably seen in your brokerage that stack of newspapers. That was REM, which referred to it as REM. That was REM sending out newspapers. Obviously, once COVID hit, people stopped being in their office. They didn't have newspapers to like send anywhere. So that's where it kind of hurt their business a little bit. So that's where we stepped in over the summer and bought it from them. So they shut down in April this year, which if you're watching this later, it's 2022. So yeah, April of 2022, they shut down. So we bought it and we're bringing it digital and kind of going with that side of it. So, I mean, it fits in really nicely with the marketing agency for a couple things. Like one, it's just way more content for us to put out there and, expand our exposure. And then we also have the marketing agency that can do a lot of the marketing for it. Because before they were running a pretty tight kind of skeleton crew over at REM. They tried to keep it pretty lean, which it's a tough way to do it that way. Whereas now we have these other options, like we have a full marketing agency to help make it successful.
So is there any printing at all at this point, or is that gone? It's
gone right now. It's not that it's gone forever. I'd be surprised, to be honest, if we bring back the monthly newspaper that gets mailed out. I think what we're looking at right now, I, to be honest, don't have a timeline right now, is doing more of maybe like a quarterly high quality magazine instead of a monthly newspaper. And then because one thing with the newspaper, right, it has a lot of news in it, but with how fast paced everything is now, by the time that once a month newsletter comes, a lot of that news is outdated.
Right.
So like we're putting 3 articles up a day on the website. Like it's a pretty fast moving thing. And even doing that, we're still behind on some news that's coming out. So we're looking at ways to even speed that up. So it's what we thought it was like a quarterly high quality magazine that like brokerages it'd be relevant if it stayed on their, coffee table in their lobby for 3 months type of thing. But that would be less like, news and more, here's things relevant to the industry, discussions, thought pieces, like professional development stuff, obviously. But right now, like I want to focus on getting the digital really going and smooth and kind of right where we want it. Then we're going to look at adding that next piece. I mean, there are a few potential things happening behind the scenes I can't really talk about that might speed up the print thing coming back. But there's nothing for sure there, so I can't really say too much yet.
So how does this come to you though? Like, did you have a connection with REM before? Were you a contributor or like how did this fall into your lap?
So I tried to buy it a couple of years ago. So I like right when COVID hit, I think it was like that August. I mean, I knew that they probably weren't doing too great. So I was interested. And first I was like, we kind of explored either some sort of partnership or us buying it outright, because there's a lot of synergies there. And the number back then they wanted really didn't make sense for us. So we were looking at, well, maybe there's an option that we could partner with them something. So instead of just like us buying ads, there could be some sort of partnership option or buy it. It didn't end up going anywhere. So we spoke for, I think, a couple months, but never went anywhere really. Then in April of 2022, they just put a post up saying they were shutting down pending finding a new buyer. So I reached out again. It took me probably 8 weeks just to get a hold of them, to just have that conversation. It was a pretty slow moving process. And then it was a slow moving process for a while, then it moved very fast. So, and then once it started moving fast, we came in with a good offer. And I think there was some competition for it, of course. But I believe we are one of the only like firm Canadian offers too, which I think really led a lot because he liked the idea. Like, so my brother and I bought it together, that, it's a family keeping it going, Canadian, and independent. So like our plan is obviously keep it kind of an independent thing, and push that forward. So it took a little bit of time, but like, again, I had been in contact with him already, trying to buy before. But before that, I had no actual, like, I'd never advertised with REM. Outside of when I used to be in my office, I would read the newspaper when a new one came in every month. I didn't really have much connection to them.
And your brother have a background in real estate too, or just a businessman?
Yes and no. So he didn't have one in like, the realtor world. He comes from the development side of the world, so finance and development. So back when I was in construction, I was on the job site briefly, but I ended up being like an estimator in the office, and he also is family business. Like, it was him, myself, and my dad. So we kind of ran and worked together back then. So kind of real estate adjacent in construction. And then he went into the development and financing side because he's business guy, numbers guy. And then he went and got a job with a company that raised a lot of money for real estate projects. And then I went into being a realtor. And then we've just kind of over time started kind of coming back together to the point that now we own a few companies together.
I have actually two questions for both of your businesses. With the so you majorly doing Facebook marketing, if
Yep.
I'm correct, yeah. So Instagram is now owned by or connected with Facebook. What do you feel about that platform and in putting it forward? As a platform for realtors, like a lot of people are
typically when I say Facebook ads, I mean Facebook and Instagram ads, because like when you build it in the back end, it goes to both. Typically, and this is a bit of an overgeneralization, but it's hard to get too deep into nuance sometimes, but paid ads are better on Facebook, organic is better on Instagram. So there's always exceptions to both there, but
you want to explain organic because I have no clue what that is.
So like organic is like your day-to-day posting on social. So this is where you're posting stuff there and not putting money behind it. You're just putting more of your time and effort. That's where Instagram's a lot better. Facebook, there's still some value in some niche things like Facebook groups, your personal profile, but like a business page on Facebook organically, there's not a lot of value there. The value of a business page on Facebook nowadays mostly is the ability to run ads because you need it to run ads. But a business profile on Instagram still has a lot of value for like that day-to-day interaction and stuff like that. So like, I'll give you an example. When we bought REM, they didn't have an Instagram account, but they did have a Facebook page that had like 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 followers. I get more engagement on a brand new Instagram account that has a couple hundred followers than the thousands of followers on Facebook. And it's not actually particularly close. So the organic side on Instagram is definitely better.
I understand. Okay.
So as a businessman, now you've acquired REM, which obviously was not doing well, but when it gets to the point, it's actually shutting down and, and going dark. So now you have a different view, different vision, different mission to establish for this, right? You're only buying because you think you can take it in a different direction. You're not going to try and do what they were doing before, because that worked to a point and then it failed, right? So what was your strategy, your new mission to relaunch REM?
So first was just going all digital. So like, as we mentioned, like they sent a newspaper every month. They covered 100% of shipping costs. Like that was a 6-figure output every year. There was no like subsidization of it or anything like that. It was just straight. They paid 100% of distribution basically up front. Not a model I wanted to jump into right at the beginning. Like maybe down the road again, we might look at that. But digital is like my expertise. And like, if you looked at what they're doing before online, it was basically banner ads on the website, banner ads in an email, which when you come from a digital marketing background, which is what we have with the agency, that's generally not the best way to have all your income tied. Like banner ads are such a small part of an online marketing strategy. And for a lot of people, I don't even think they're worth it. So like the couple companies that we have, like I've had a few advertisers reach out that I've actually talked them off of buying our banner ads because there's other things that made more sense for their business. So we'll look at it as like, what are the other options? And there's going to be more and more coming as time goes on with the company. Like right now, we're focusing just like get it back up and running, get traffic back, because I think it went down to about 5,000 views a month after they shut down page views. So like it was pretty low traffic, just kind of like residual Google organic traffic to old articles. And already now we've been up for 6.5, 7 weeks. And we're on, if we look at the last 7 days and then put that out to like a month's worth of traffic as an estimate, we're going to be hitting about 80,000 page views in a month. So it's been getting it back up pretty fast. And now we're looking at like, there's a lot of different options for monetizing now that we can do. But then the benefit of having the agency is I don't need to sell all the ad space either, is because it can bring business over to the agency as well. So that's one advantage. Like I don't have to take, like I've turned some advertisers away because I didn't think they were a good fit. And so like unsold ad space, I can essentially sell to myself and make that. So like we can be a little bit more discerning about the quality of the ads going up and the partners that we're working with.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe expand on that a little bit. Like what is it that you do look for? Like that's going to give, you know, the right type of marketing tools, the right type of partners to come on board with you.
So even our ads, kind of the main things we want to be valuable to realtors. So if it's just, you know, like as an easy example, which is an obvious one to turn away, we get a lot of online casinos coming to us because of the traffic we get, right? Like that's a no-brainer. Like I'm not putting online casino ads, even if they do pay way more than others. Like it just doesn't make sense to fit in. Whereas
Right.
like for our month launch, we had a big partner month one, Humber College. Like they were launching courses for licensed realtors because they acknowledged going through the licensing that teaches you like the legal side of the business and like how not to get sued basically. But the actual like running a business, they know that there's a gap there. So Humber has now launched a bunch of courses for licensed realtors on like how to run a business, how to lead a business and that side of things. So like that to us is a great partner because I've been in the industry for 10 years. I see that gap that's there for a lot of new people coming in and that's a need. So like that one to me made a lot of sense as an advertising partner to bring that in. So like basically at the end of the day, even advertorials, everything like that, it has to lead with if I'm a realtor reading it, getting something away from it and not just like, okay, they're trying to sell me. Like, yes, you know instinctively that an advertorial, because we mark them, is selling you, but there still should be value in it. Like we were talking to a company yesterday about doing one, and I was very clear, like, and they agreed with me, which was nice. Is like, this can't just be you talking about your service. Like, let's put a problem out there that every agent experiences, and then what the potential result would be, and then how your product kind of got them from the problem to the happy ending, basically. So like, yes, it's still promotional, but it's educational as well.
Right.
That's good. That fits right in with the David and David podcast. We try really hard. You know, I mention my firm once in a while, and Sabiha or David mentioned their brokerage once in a while, but we're not really trying to promote our businesses. We're trying to provide a service and make this as neutral as possible, that anybody that wants to come on as a guest is welcome, and just people that just want to raise the bar in the industry and have new and interesting ideas. So, you know, I really like the fact that you're screening who potential advertisers are. Like, it's really hard to turn away cash from a gambling advertiser right now. Like, they're all throwing it out there, and that could keep you going for a long time, but it's not the direction you want to take REM.
Well, that's the advantage with having other businesses is like, I don't like, yes, obviously I want it to be a profitable business on its own, but coming out of the gate, it doesn't need to be. At the very, like, my goal is like, even for the first year, just to even break even, I'd be happy with. And like, that's not that hard to do because it's a pretty low cost thing to run. Now that we don't have print.
You know, whenever I'm training my realtors, I keep talking about the USP, the unique selling proposition, and that each one of us has it. And that's what sets us apart. And I know that David and his partner, Jonathan, are very much on the same stride as we are on the brokerage. And from what I'm hearing from you, I think when you have an entrepreneur in your heart, you're always looking for that niche that was missing when you were doing something. And it's coming from that, it's an idea, it's a concept, but it's also coming from that place is I did not have that for myself getting into the business. So that's where it lacks. So it's a business possibility, but it's also coming from that point of I want to help everybody else that is coming on board, you know. And I mean, like something like the Real Estate Magazine, you know, it was something that was an important part of realtors' lives. And then it would have just dwindled and gone away. Like you said, you know, the spark was out already. It was burned down basically. To rekindle it, to modernize it, to bring it to forum that newer realtors will actually feel connected towards, right? Because it's so important. And you know, I keep saying this is such a lonely business. Realtors are so lonely, so on their own, that if there is a voice, if there's a forum, and the background of it is like what you gave such an amazing example is that you know, choosing partners, advertisers are partners, right? They're the ones that keep the fuel and the business keep going. If you choose the right partners that are actually you're bringing something to notice for realtors, this is available for you, this will help you in your business, you know, and growth. It's such a phenomenal part of any business. And I know that David and Jonathan have grown their law firm phenomenally over the years, you know, from where it started. And it you have to be ingenious about, you know, your ideas, and come from that forum of like, I'm going to do something which is not being done. I'm going to go above and beyond the you know, call of duty.
Yeah. And like that to me is like an important part of REM, is like it has been an important voice. I can't say the voice of Canadian real estate because another company's trademarked that. But like that idea of like, there's not, once REM shut down, there wasn't another option in Canada. Like you're looking at the, you know, the Inmans of the world in the US who might throw the odd Canadian article up there, but there really isn't competition directly in Canada for what REM had been doing. Like there's a couple of the odd publications here and there that have like dabbled a little bit in it, but maybe go more consumer side. But like a industry focused Canadian publication didn't exist besides REM. So that's from the purely business side. It's a great model when you're the only one. So that, like on the business side, similar to like the agency side, what we do for agents in Canada, there's not a lot of companies that compete with us directly. There's a lot of American competition. But that's where like the two businesses are really like kind of fit in well with what we're doing, that we're pretty low on the direct competition in Canada front.
So I see that all the time.
Just clarify, sorry, Sabiha, just to clarify, so when you're referring to the agency side of this, are you referring to, is this all within REM?
So I have a marketing agency as a separate company from REM.
As a separate company.
Yeah. So that's like, technically it's like the agency is what bought REM.
Okay.
So that but there are separate companies. So like REM is the trade publication that we keep separate from the agency, where we take on clients and like help them with their marketing. So like REM also, that's another way it feeds into it, is like, so for example, like one of the big brands in Canada is our client. We run their national Facebook campaigns. Well, now we get introduced to more companies that like want ads here, but then we can help them take over even their non-REM advertising from the agency side. So it introduces us to more clients like that as well, but basically like allows support and execution to come in from that side of things. It's quite useful. So
what's the agency called?
Just Sell Homes.
Just Sell Homes. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you're really running two different completely different businesses.
They just have a lot of synergies.
There's a lot of synergies between them and advantages for having both.
Yeah.
And moving things from one to the other.
Yeah. So like it's, you know, obviously there's a lot of efficiencies having the two, because there's, despite being very different businesses, a lot of overlap in the type of work that happens. So like, you know, my team who was writing all our email marketing for our clients and for us, we just basically told them REM is now, treat REM like a client of yours that you're doing email marketing for. Yeah. Obviously it saves some cost for me to not have to hire extra REM staff at the beginning. I could put that more into growth. And yeah, there's a lot of great options there for what we're doing.
It also gives you a voice and a forum, right? For your for your magazine.
Yeah, I'm
Are
trying to
you,
find a balance
are
though of
you,
not being too like just sell homes, just sell homes, just
no,
sell
no,
homes.
no. But would you be using REM for your clientele from the marketing company also?
Yeah, so like one of the things we've done, so like especially if right now, because like I haven't had time to like go push REM sales, to be honest, because I'm personally doing the sales. Like we're in the process of looking for someone to help with that. So it's basically all been inbound, which means I don't sell every advertising opportunity that's out there. Sometimes if I have a client that would benefit from REM sales, we might allocate some of their spend towards that instead. Obviously, there's some benefits we might be able to pass on. That's maybe better pricing, little things like that. But we do try to keep it separate as much as possible. But I can't say that just sell homes clients don't have a little bit of an advantage there that REM is available. And then I also let them give us insight. So we do like a paid Thursday newsletter every week. Actually, when I'm done this podcast, I have to go write it. But like one of the things there is like one of the unique things that REM has is we have 30,000 agents on our mailing list. And like, for example, our last email went out had a 47% open rate. Like we can get a lot of feedback quickly from the industry. So it's like we'll all talk to, because we have a lot of top producers and stuff like that on our mailing list that just sell homes. They'll be like, well, if you could ask 30,000 agents spread across Canada any questions you wanted, what would those be? And then we can take that and run surveys in REM and get data that I'll also share with them first. Like definitely there's some advantages for people in the just sell homes world that we now own REM. But it's still like mostly separate. It's just there's a few perks, I would say, that come out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously you're following what's going on in the real estate industry. The guys that are in the trenches just trying to sell real estate, right?
Yeah.
Because you have to be in tune with what's going on, so what type of articles they might be interested in, what kind of news they might be interested in, things like that. So what are you seeing? What, from your point of view, what do you see what's going on in this market late October 2022?
So it's funny because like I'm constantly paying attention to like what's getting the most traffic, what's getting the most like engagement. They're like mostly it's like obviously like the CBC stories around like mortgage fraud that came out. That's a big driver of traffic. Anything that's like market related, like what's happening, especially like what's happening in different marketplaces. That type of content's been really popular. Tons of discussions lately around the new policy about exclusive listings from Korea. So it's basically things that's going to affect them on the day-to-day, like kind of the bigger thinking stuff, or like, white papers that are maybe more like MLS focused. Maybe it's like realtors in the day-to-day, they don't see how that impacts them the same way. But basically anything that impacts their day-to-day gets a ton of traffic. So that's the stuff we kind of look at doing more of that, while adding in some of that bigger thinking piece as more of like a once in a while content. But anything that impacts someone's day-to-day is huge.
And you're looking at things from a Canada-wide perspective, right? You're not focused on Ontario or GTA, even though you're based here, but you're really trying to be national in what you're talking about and what you're putting out there.
Yeah, and like the way we kind of roughly look at it, it doesn't work out perfectly, is like, what's the realtor distribution across Canada? That should be our content distribution. So if, say, hypothetically, 10% of agents are in Alberta, 10% of our content should be from Alberta. It doesn't always work out perfectly. And because of that, right, like there's just so many agents in Ontario comparatively that, yes, content does skew to be a little bit more Ontario focused. But if you actually look at the percentage breakdown of content, there's a few provinces outside of Ontario that actually like rank higher from a proportional basis for the amount of content they're getting. But it's a tough balance to strike when 70% of realtors in Canada are in Ontario, but people complain if you don't only put out Ontario content. But we don't only put out Ontario content. It just sometimes it looks that way because it's representational of the audience size.
Yeah, and we always find that a lot of the leading trends or the changes, and sometimes it's just it's even from a legislative point of view, a lot of stuff seems to originate in BC. It seems like it happens in BC first, and then Ontario starts to look at it, and then the other provinces follow suit. So like we're always keeping an eye on what's going on in BC to see what's, what they're up to.
Yeah, and that's one thing we want to bring in is like I'm looking at a series where we dive deep into like what are the day-to-day differences in each province for people, because a lot of people don't know how things operate a little bit. Like the obvious one in BC is like no double ending anymore. So it's like, how has that impacted it? What does that look like? But like, let's take Alberta, let's take Manitoba. Like, what are the differences that they have and how they operate? So looking at all those different things in each province, and then eventually I'd love to do like a worldwide series, like how is real estate done in different countries around the world, just as like a comparison to Canada. But that's a for future project.
That'll be interesting. It's very, very interesting how different it is. Like I was dealing with someone a while ago who was selling a property in Australia, and the system there, like it's so different that you can't even imagine coming up with a system that would be so different from our system. Like it's an auction system there. Yeah. Like you want to sell your house.
Very unique, right?
It's
like
just putting it up on auction. Like that's the system. You get it staged, you have people come through, and then here's the auction day, and here's the price we're looking for, and best offer wins.
Yeah. And like the MLS system is a unique North American thing. Like it doesn't really like, I remember when I worked for one of the head offices, they had, a branch in Europe, and it's like there, it's basically a free for all. Like if you're selling your home in a lot of places in Europe, you can hire 5 different listing agents to sell your house, and they all put a sign on, whoever gets the sale gets the commission. Like it's,
right.
But there's no MLS to even go search for homes. So it's a very different model for a lot of people. So like I know a company that's trying to create like a global MLS basically, and it's ambitious and that is tough.
Andrew, I had these clients of mine that are originally from England, and they had a couple of properties there that needed to be sold off, and and that they were telling me how they've become used to the system here, being here for the last, I think they've been here for about 18 years. And there's absolutely no system in England, and anybody can open shop, and become a realtor, and then you have to, wait around for them to actually do stuff for you. What you had brought up about being a Canadian resource, that's so important, because it's real estate is so big, especially in Ontario and in BC, and now I think Alberta is heavily marketing themselves towards it as well. And there's a lot of investors going there too. And before, I remember, like even a few years ago, everything you could find, and all the training even is coming from US actually, which is kind of strange and hard, because I think we're a much more active market. Regulations and rules are very different here compared to what they are in US, and most of the marketing companies are from US with that same forum. Right, so it doesn't really sit very well with what our realtors are faced with. So I'm really happy to know that that you guys are out there. You guys are providing a platform for marketing and a voice, and the stories are coming from within our market. Which is very big. Like obviously, if you have so many realtors, there must be a reason for it, right? There is such a calling for it.
Well, there's been I remember even because like REM, especially being digital or print only, like they did have a little bit online, but didn't do a lot. Like how many conversations I've had with people that were like, oh, we need something like Inman in Canada. And like I can't tell you how many times I've had that. Like when REM announced shutdown, most people didn't know I had tried to buy them already. I probably had 15 to 20 people send me the link to it shutting down, being like, you need to be the one to buy this. I was like, surprise, I've already tried. So it did work out quite well. Yeah. So that was because I didn't notice it to be like that day, like when the email went out, I hadn't opened it and read it. So I didn't know they shut down until I started getting like my inbox blew up a little bit, being like, are you buying this? You should buy this. Do you need me to introduce you?
Well, you're the natural buyer. It's amazing that it works out that way. Let me ask you just a question of how it works when, as a publisher of a magazine, whether you're online, digital, a topic comes up that you think we should do a story on. Let's pick a topic. Let's say it's the ban on foreign buyers. Okay. And we don't know all the answers, but all of a sudden there's the government says we want to ban foreign buyers. So at some point you think, okay, we should probably do a story on that or get more insight on it or do something. So who do you give that to? How do you do that? Like, where are you looking to get that content from?
So I actually essentially do nothing on that front myself. So that I run the business side of it. I've hired an editor to do the content side. And that's very on purpose to have me separated from that, because you don't want like advertising to potentially impact the stories we're going to cover from like a journalistic integrity standpoint. So I do keep myself, like, I generally find out about stories the same time everyone else does when they end up on the website. Sometimes, like, because of the woman we hired, Jordana, who's so far amazing, like she was Global News Toronto for 3 years producing that. She produced like CTV Vancouver. So she's very experienced in the journalism world, but new to real estate. So like at the beginning, and which we're still in, she asked me a little bit more for feedback or context. But over time, even that will stop because she's learning very quickly kind of all the nuance of the industry, which will take some time. But essentially it's her. Like, as an example, like the new Ford regulations about development that came out yesterday, I flipped her an article on it. I was like, we should do a story about this. She's like, I'm already writing one. So she is 100% in kind of control of that. I generally don't get involved in that unless I see something out there breaking. I might make sure that she sees it, but I would say after the first 2 weeks of her working, almost everything I've ever sent her, she's like already in. So she's even more kind of in tune with it than I am these days.
So she's a journalist, a real journalist. So would she tend to just want to do that on her own, or she have a team working with her, or do you go freelance outside to get?
So she does write a lot of the articles herself. But we basically have given her a freelance budget. So that's what REM had done before historically. So Jim Adair has been the same editor since 1989. He actually helped us relaunch REM and then help hand off to Jordana. So he basically had a budget monthly for freelance writers, which as their revenue went down, they didn't have as big of a budget for it. So we've kind of boosted that budget up significantly. So she has more of a budget for kind of higher end writers, more content. But then she does a lot herself. So a lot of like, if you ever on the website and you see like it's written by REM editorial team, that's usually Jordana writing it. Once in a while it might not be, but most of the time it is. And then she does have a stable of freelance writers that Jim introduced her to when he was handing off. And then we've also started kind of collecting some of our own. Long term, we'll hire staff writers and start bringing stuff like that in-house. But that's kind of like as revenue comes up, we're reinvesting into the company. So eventually we'll have a team of in-house staff writers. We'll eventually be pushing more into video content, podcast, stuff like that. But that's as we're going, we're going to incrementally bring in more and more.
So right now a freelancer could approach you. Hey, I just did this story on what Doug Ford announced yesterday. And
first, so there's two ways that we kind of look at it with freelancers, and then there's paid freelancers and then contributors that do like free stories. All right. It's like we get a lot of industry people who are like, hey, I'd love to write an opinion column or a story about X topic. That gets pitched to us on the freelance side. Some will come to us with a story. Typically we get a story and then assign it to a freelancer. So on the paid freelancer side, it's more us finding someone. We more get pitched by freelancers on becoming one of the people we'll go to. I think not that often do freelancers pitch us a story. But if they have a great angle, we're always open to it. But most pitches we get are more for industry side people who would just like to kind of get an article up in it, which we're very open to. So if someone has an idea, something they'd like to write, we're always open to that. I mean, for your own selfish interest, legal content always does very well. Stuff like that typically has been pretty popular content from before we took it over. Their most popular content was mostly on the legal side.
Yeah. Well, interesting. So you really, turned the way REM is doing business, away from print. Away from that, it'll be totally digital, but you get the right content in there, you get the right advertisers. It's great that you're just not accepting everybody as an advertiser, and you're looking for the right ones. And looks like this will be around to stay and really make a difference in the industry. And the fact that you don't have any real competition, in this in Canada is really good. I'm glad there's somebody writing and doing this in Canadian content.
Yeah, it's been a lot. Like, I mean, I've known it's been needed for a long time, and that's one I'm really excited to be kind of taking on, because I think it's needed very much in the industry. And then, I mean, obviously, selfishly, it's also a great business if it's done right. It's a tough thing to make that transition.
And Andrew, there is absolutely no platform, right, where people can just go on to and read stuff. And what a great point you brought in, like, law firms like Kormans and so many other platforms, right? Like inspectors and home inspectors, and what to look for, and it literally can be the go-to place to give people ideas that at least open doors in concepts that this should be something that you should be thinking about, and whatever's happening in the market and affecting the business.
I've joked with a few realtors that they should follow the same model for promotion of, like, don't put an ad in the local newspaper, try to buy the local newspaper. It works for realtors too, because a trade publication works very similar to like a community newspaper.
Right.
Can you work that in my industry? Like, don't go to a lawyer for closing, try and buy the law firm instead.
I do know people who try to do that. But yeah, like, it's similar. Like, even in, I don't know if there is a legal one in Canada that does like a trade publication for lawyers or real estate lawyers, but that's also on our future roadmap too.
Yeah, there are, there's there are some magazines out there in the legal profession, and most of it's really on a national level, and then some of it's local too. But it's all over the place. It's not specific to the real estate industry. So I'm getting it, these weekly magazines and stuff like that. But a lot of it's on litigation, and I'm like, okay, who cares about litigation? I want to read about transactions and the commercial side of things. So it's not separate in our industry. Maybe there's an opening there for someone to really do that
on our future roadmap that we're looking at. Because, like, essentially what's going to happen is there's going to be a fork in the road in a couple of years of, we've kind of hit a point where, like, yes, we can keep growing in Canada, but do we pivot and starting to add in some American content, which is not something I really want to go. What I think we're going to do is pivot and, like, start maybe doing mortgage broker content or real estate lawyer content, and kind of take that approach. So it's still like industry, but then, like, do we do that, or do we go more developer content? So that's where we're kind of looking at as a future thing, is adding in kind of like the realtor and residential real estate industry adjacent industries and becoming part of it. And then, like, whether that becomes a part of REM or we spin off their own version of REM, we're not 100% sure yet, but that's a future problem. I got to get this up and going more consistently first. But definitely there's a few things we're looking at like that.
All right. In the meantime, I know we don't have a lot of time left, but we want to get some sort of message out to realtors, like, why, agents that are out there right now should be looking at what you're doing, and why, why is it to their advantage?
So one, it's unbiased, which I'm a big fan of, because, like, most of the news people are getting from the industry comes from, like, their brand or their board, where there is a bit of a more bias there. We're kind of that unbiased source of it. And there's also just a lot of, like, good professional development content we're putting out there, different voices you might not ever have heard before. And we're keep trying to kind of put a lot of perspectives out there about the industry coming from a more of an unbiased source. And we send out 3 newsletters a week, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We kind of give you the, here's what you need to do to stay on top of things. So I always encourage people to join our newsletter, because that allows you to kind of stay up to date on the industry a little bit more passively, because it just comes into your inbox. You can take 10 minutes, and we try to keep them very digestible, where it's like, here's a couple of highlights. And then if you want to go in depth more, you can click through and read more, but we at least give you the highlights in the email.
Andrew, just a quick question about this. So I know I encourage realtors to post a lot of stuff that is current on their social media and stuff. Have you started something in Realm where it can be actually shared on social media? Do you have articles and things that you're actually publishing that can be shared by realtors?
Yeah, I mean, in the sense, like, yes, realtors could share content. Our content is for realtors typically. So for them to share in their social, it's not like stuff meant for consumers. There's the odd article where maybe like a home inspector or a lawyer does write something for us that has just as many applications for the consumer. So they could repurpose it. But it's more like realistically, people sharing our direct content on social is either going to be inside realtor groups or like their brokerage sharing it to their agents type of thing, because it's not meant to be consumer focused. We're basically trying to be 100% industry side.
So it's for me to share.
Yeah, for you to share with your agents. But like, yes, there's the odd content. Like generally, to be honest, from a social media marketing perspective, if you're taking REM content to share with consumers, you're probably better off taking a couple tips and turning that into your own post than like sharing a REM article. Because like if a consumer comes to our site, most of it's not going to be relevant to them. So it's better like give those great tips, take the tips, put them into your own post. As much as I would like extra traffic, for us, the value is industry traffic, not just bigger numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it's a valuable service for agents and brokerages to check out and look into. It's all part of, the ongoing training and professional development that we all go through. Because if we think we're going to do business today like we did 10 years ago or 5 years ago, or even last spring, that's not happening. You got to keep looking at what's next and what's going on out there and check out the trends. So I think, Andrew, you're on something that I'm glad you got this resurrected and it didn't die last April, and it's making a comeback, and I'm sure it'll be better than ever as time goes on.
Appreciate it. I'm excited for it. And you're going to start seeing more and more come out as we kind of get things relaunched. I have a lot of plans for new types of content and stuff like that. It's going to be fun.
Amazing. All right. Wonderful having you on board, Andrew.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, have a great rest of the week. And we're going to definitely be looking out for a REM and also your advertising platform for realtors.
Appreciate it
so much.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Andrew.